Deep within the Silver Dragon dungeon, a figure appeared, instantly recognized by the guards as their queen. Without hesitation, they bowed in reverence, but she dismissed them with a single order, desiring to confront the prisoner alone. The Silver Dragon Queen, Roswise, stepped forward, her gaze locking onto the man within, the renowned dragon-slaying hero, Leon Cosmo. With a mocking expression, she taunted him, questioning how it felt to be in the clutches of the Dragon Clan. Yet he remained indifferent, responding only with a request for her to kill him. Amused by his defiance, she toyed with the idea of granting him a swift death, but decided against it. Instead, she remarked on his strong, resolute features, finding them intriguing. With sharp claws, she dragged her nails across his face, leaving fresh scars. He turned his head away, frustration evident as he demanded that she cease her humiliation and finish him quickly. Ignoring his protests, she licked the blood from her fingertips, savoring its taste. She noted that, if not for the betrayal of a villain, he would not have fallen to such a miserable fate. Then, as if testing him, she extended an invitation, offering him a place within the Silver Dragon clan. His response was one of scorn, a trace of amusement flickering across his face, despite his predicament. The reaction ignited her fury. Without warning, she lashed her tail, sending him crashing into the dungeon wall with tremendous force. As he slumped to the ground, she approached him, pressing her foot against his chest, asserting her dominance. She addressed him by his true name, Leon Cosmo, ridiculing his former glory. Once he had been a hero, praised by thousands, determined to eradicate the Dragon Clan and carve his name into history. But now, he was nothing more than a prisoner, doomed to rot in the depths of the dungeon. His dreams of leaving behind a legacy were nothing but a foolish fantasy. She continued, remarking that, had he chosen submission, his descendants could have basked in power and prosperity. But none of that mattered, because he had no successor. Enraged by her words, he attempted to refute her, but she swiftly coiled her tail around his throat, lifting him off the ground. She noted his stubbornness with amusement as he struggled to breathe. Despite the suffocating grip, he managed to speak, addressing her by her title. She assumed he was finally about to beg for mercy, but instead he spoke of two grave mistakes she had made. The statement puzzled her, and as she hesitated, he elaborated. Her first mistake had been meeting with the strongest dragon slayer alone. The second, far more disastrous, was tasting his blood. In an instant, power surged through her body. The blood curse activated. A sudden unbearable heat spread through Raswesa's body. Staggering back, she released him instinctively, her breath growing ragged. Confusion clouded her mind as an unfamiliar sensation overtook her, burning through her veins. She collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed. Leon, regaining his footing, observed her reaction closely. He assured her that soon the pain would consume her very soul, a suffering unlike any she had ever known. But something unexpected happened. Instead of agony, something else took hold. Her movements became erratic as she lunged forward, pinning him down before he could react. A moment later, her lips pressed against his. Shock paralyzed him, but strangely, he did not resist. An hour later, the cold dungeon floor was littered with the remnants of their garments. Once the intense sensation subsided, Roswise regained her senses and, enraged, turned her attention to Leon. She lashed out, demanding to know what he had done to her while aiming her sharp tail at him. Leon, remaining calm, explained that it was a blood curse, a forbidden technique that could only be used once in a lifetime. He revealed that by tasting his blood, she had unknowingly formed a soul connection with him, and upon his death, the curse would subject her to endless torment. Roswise furiously dismissed his words as nonsense, demanding to know why the curse had already taken effect if it was supposed to activate after his death. Leon admitted that it had been an unexpected consequence. He had assumed the curse would only manifest through the pain caused by his death, but he had never anticipated that it would have such an unusual side effect. Enraged by his explanation, she yelled at him to be silent, but he continued, teasingly remarking that dragons were monogamous by nature. This meant that not only would she be unable to take another mate after his death, but she would also be left without an heir, unable to explain the situation to her clan. Leon added that the effects of the forbidden spell had surpassed even his expectations. Infuriated, Roswise lashed out, her sharp nails slicing across his skin, but he did not resist. Instead, he asked if she intended to kill him, reminding her that she did not need to do it herself, as he would not live much longer. Before collapsing, he cursed her to live with hatred for him and to suffer pain for the rest of her life. Dressed once more, Rosswise nudged him with her foot, questioning if this was his method of revenge. She wondered aloud if he truly wished for death. Determined, she released her power, declaring that it would not be so simple. Then, she placed a mark on his chest, sealing his fate. Leon Cosmo had once been a legendary dragon-slaying hero. At the age of 5, he had killed a vicious dog with his bare hands, drawing the attention of a top dragon slayer who took him as an apprentice. By 10, he had entered the Imperial Dragon Slayer Academy, and at 14 graduated as the youngest student in history, achieving the highest recorded evaluation. By 15, Leon had stepped onto the battlefield, slaying countless dragons, reclaiming lost lands, and earning numerous military honors for the Empire. His name became synonymous with humanity's hope for victory. However, his legend was abruptly halted when he was captured by the Dragon Clan. 2 years had passed since that day. After 2 years of captivity, Leon awoke in a panic, gasping for breath. He hastily checked his body and surroundings, trying to determine where he was. Just then, the door creaked open and a small, adorable child entered the room, sweetly informing him that he was finally awake. Struck by her cuteness, Leon assumed he had died and ascended to heaven. He was convinced that the little girl before him was an angel. When she curiously asked what an angel was, Leon simply crouched to her level and asked for her name. She joyfully introduced herself as Muin. Laughing, Leon complimented her name but couldn't help but notice her unusual black and white hair. Muin explained that her mother had named her after the moon, which made Leon wonder if even angels had mothers. Introducing himself as Leon Cosmo, he was surprised when Muin excitedly announced that she already knew, saying her mother had told her that his name meant lion. Startled, Leon asked who her mother was. When Muin revealed the answer, he froze in disbelief. Staring at himself in shock, he struggled to comprehend the truth. Then, with unwavering excitement, Muin called him her father, leaving him utterly speechless. As realization sank in, he wondered if Muin could truly be his and Rosswise's child. Before he could process his thoughts, Muin's mother entered the room. Calling out to her, Muin excitedly declared that Leon was finally awake. Rosswise greeted him with a warm smile, acknowledging his return to consciousness. Muin, delighted, pointed out how her mother had visited him every day, to which Rosswise agreed. However, Leon, skeptical, thought only a fool would believe her words. Rosswise then instructed Muin to go play outside, as she had something to discuss with her father. Happily obliging, Muin left the room. The moment she was gone, Leon immediately demanded to know if she was truly his daughter. Rosswise, unbothered, confirmed it, asking him what else Muin could possibly be. Leon erupted in frustration, reminding Rosswise that she despised him. However, she merely locked the door with her tail and approached him as he demanded answers. He wanted to know why she had chosen to give birth to the child and why she had saved him. Rosswise remained indifferent, stating that he had been unconscious for 2 years. Did he truly believe she would simply let things go after what he had done to her? Leon furiously shouted back, arguing that he had never wanted any of it to happen. He reminded her that they were fundamentally different and could never coexist. Under normal circumstances, he would never have laid a hand on her. Angered by his words, Rosswise leaned in and questioned whether touching her had been torment for him. Without hesitation, Leon confirmed that it was. In retaliation, she used her tail to grab his foot, forcefully slammed him onto the bed, and climbed over him. Alarmed, Leon demanded to know what she was doing, but she remained silent and tore open his shirt. She declared that she intended to carve her own dragon mark onto him. He shouted for her to stop, but she ignored him, imprinting her mark on his chest, ensuring that he would never be able to escape her grasp. From that moment onward, he would be her prisoner. Rosswise taunted him, asking how his fellow humans would react upon seeing a dragon mark on his body. Would they still view him as a hero, or as a traitor who had surrendered to the dragons? When Leon asked why she was taking things this far, she scoffed, accusing him of pretending not to understand. Her goal was clear. She wanted him to live in shame, humiliated for the rest of his days. As she leaned closer, Leon felt a strange heat rise within him. She kissed him, whispering that it was time to begin. The next morning, the Silver Dragon Castle was filled with whispers among the maids. They remarked that their queen was in an exceptionally good mood, gossiping about how her husband had finally woken up. Meanwhile, Leon, who had endured a sleepless night, overheard them and realized that Rosswise had publicly announced him as her husband. He wanted to shout that they had no idea how terrifying their queen truly was. He recalled the previous night, how Rosswise had completely overpowered him, leaving him feeling utterly drained. Determined, he vowed not to stay and become her plaything. Observing his surroundings, he noted 4 dragons guarding the side entrance, making an escape seem nearly impossible. However, he found it odd that the castle seemed less guarded than before. Spotting an unusual hole in the wall, he cautiously approached it. It seemed suspicious, and he considered the possibility of a trap. However, he reminded himself that he had no choice. He had to escape, no matter the risk. Resolving to break free at any cost, he stepped forward. As he entered the hole, he muttered a sarcastic farewell to Rosswise, whom he now regarded as nothing more than a perverse and domineering dragon. Thinking of Muin, he admitted she was undeniably adorable. However, for now, he decided that raising her would remain Rosswise's responsibility. Meanwhile, in a distant tower, Muin observed the scene below with great interest and remarked to Rosswise that her father was quite impressive, noting how he was digging his way out. Rosswise, amused by the sight, acknowledged that she had seen it too and agreed that Leon was indeed something else. Muin then curiously inquired when Rosswise planned to retrieve him, but Rosswise only corrected her without further elaboration. After some time, Leon managed to climb over the rugged mountains and at last caught sight of the borders marking human territory. Believing that the great distance he had covered would ensure that Rosswise could no longer pursue him, he allowed himself a moment of relief. However, that relief quickly turned into alarm as the sound of massive wings flapping overhead filled the air. Looking up, he saw Rosswise descending from the sky, swiftly closing the distance between them. Panic surged through him, and he immediately resumed running in desperation. Rosswise effortlessly overtook him, landing ahead of him with ease. As she watched his struggle, there was a clear sense of satisfaction in her demeanor. Leon, frustrated by the situation, questioned her amusement, unable to comprehend why she enjoyed tormenting him like this. Rosswise revealed that his escape had not been entirely his own doing. She had subtly guided his way, ensuring the guards were distracted and leaving a clear path for him to follow. Though Leon had suspected something was amiss, he had no other choice but to seize the opportunity, never expecting her to catch up with him so quickly. Rosswise then pointed out the inevitable consequence of his predicament. If he were to return to human lands with the mark she had placed on him, would they still recognize him as the dragon slayer he once was? Leon, unwilling to accept defeat, declared that he would forge a new path and live as an ordinary man, seeing it as a far better fate than enduring her captivity. Rosswise, however, was unimpressed by his defiance, seeing it as a lack of gratitude for what she had offered him. With little patience for his protest, she seized him and lifted him into the air, leaving him to demand answers about where she intended to take him. Hours later, Rosswise brought Leon near the Empire's border city and unceremoniously released him mid-air, sending him tumbling through the trees. As he struggled to recover from the impact, he was shocked to see a human settlement nearby. Before he could even process the situation fully, Rosswise, having already shifted into her human form, stood beside him. She made it clear that things were not as simple as he assumed. The mark on his chest glowed ominously, reacting to her presence. Alarmed by the sudden sensation coursing through his body, he leaned against a tree for support, while Rosswise approached with a knowing smirk. She reminded him of the nature of the dragon's mark. When one of the two marked individuals desired intimacy, the mark would react accordingly. Leon, caught off guard by the revelation, immediately grasped her intent and felt the weight of the predicament she had orchestrated. Rosswise's true purpose for bringing him so close to human civilization became apparent. It was not an act of kindness, but rather a demonstration of his powerlessness. He was mere steps away from the life he once knew, yet bound by the constraints she had placed upon him. She intended for him to experience the full extent of shame and helplessness that came with his situation. Despite her efforts to break his spirit, Leon refused to succumb. He vowed to endure, waiting for the right opportunity to turn the tables and reclaim his dignity. His declaration of defiance momentarily surprised Rosswise, but she quickly masked it with amusement. She welcomed his challenge, indicating that she would be waiting for him to prove himself, whether in triumph or in defeat. An hour later, Rosswise seemed to revel in her own satisfaction, clearly pleased with the results of their encounter. Leon, on the other hand, lay exhausted and overwhelmed. As she casually teased him about revisiting his hometown on a regular basis, he recoiled at the mere thought, denouncing her as nothing more than a relentless tormentor. Rosswise, unbothered, simply found amusement in his predictable reaction, fully aware that he had no means of escaping her grasp. When she announced their departure, Leon abruptly halted her, determined to assert some measure of control over his fate. He declared that, as a dragon slayer, he refused to be treated like prey, and insisted on traveling by his own means. Rosswise, unimpressed by his stubbornness, reminded him of the vast distance between their current location and the Silver Dragon Castle. What took her only hours to traverse would take him weeks on foot. Leon dismissed the challenge, claiming that human endurance should not be underestimated. Rosswise, intrigued by his determination, decided to let him, curious to see how long he would last. However, it did not take long for exhaustion to overtake Leon. Watching him struggle, she found the situation highly amusing and playfully remarked on his weakness. Leon stubbornly denied his fatigue, though it was evident that he was pushing himself beyond his limits. Just as the tension between them reached its peak, the sound of approaching carriages broke the moment. Leon quickly identified the figures as members of the Dragon Slayer army. A fleeting hope sparked within him at the thought of possible rescue. However, he was immediately faced with a grim reality. Rosswise, upon noticing the intruders, radiated an unmistakable aura of hostility. It was clear that if Leon made any attempt to call for help, she would not hesitate to slaughter them all. As the leader of the Dragon Slayer team signaled the group to halt, he scrutinized Rosswise and Leon, questioning whether they had lost their way. Aware of the potential danger to innocent bystanders, Leon quickly fabricated an excuse, claiming they were merely passing through. The leader dismounted, issuing a caution about the perilous creatures lurking within the forest, and extending an offer to escort them safely. Approaching Leon, the man introduced himself as Walker, captain of the 47th Squadron of the Imperial Dragon Slayer Army. The unexpected revelation sent a jolt of alarm through Leon, prompting him to subtly motion Walker to maintain his distance. While expressing gratitude for the captain's generosity, Leon assured him that he and Rosswise possessed the necessary skills to fend for themselves. Walker, however, in suspicion, sensing something familiar about Leon's features. A sinking feeling gripped Leon as he caught sight of Rosswise's expression darkening, her aura intensifying. Recognizing the escalating tension, Leon made a split-second decision. Grabbing her hand, he pulled her close and feigned a cheerful demeanor, insisting to Walker that it must be a case of mistaken identity. He further joked about having such an ordinary face that even his own wife sometimes failed to recognize him. In a hushed tone, Leon desperately negotiated with Rosswise, pledging to return with her without resistance if she assisted in avoiding a confrontation. Amused by his quick thinking, Rosswise played along, wrapping her arms around him in a display of affection. The deception worked. Walker, thoroughly convinced, laughed heartily and bid them farewell, dismissing himself and his men. Once the Dragon Slayers disappeared, Rosswise wasted no time in confronting him, demanding to know whether he had enjoyed clinging to her for so long. Flustered, he quickly distanced himself, adamantly denying any enjoyment in the embrace. Rosswise, unfazed by his protests, commended him for his cleverness in not seeking help from the Dragon Slayers, but sternly reminded him of his position. Despite the child they shared, she had never acknowledged him as anything more than her possession. Leon, bristling at the remark, retorted with frustration, but she dismissed his protests, turning her focus to their impending journey back. Before Leon could react further, a sudden sharp pain shot through his hand. Glancing down, he noticed a wound he hadn't been aware of before. Dizziness overtook him, and within moments, he crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Rosswise approached him, shaking her head at his fragile human endurance. Assessing his condition briefly, she shifted into her dragon form, effortlessly lifting him by his clothing and placing him securely on her back. With a powerful thrust of her wings, she took to the skies, heading straight for the Silver Dragon Castle. She mused to herself that for now she would consider his collapse as an unspoken plea for mercy. The next day, within the grand halls of the castle, Leon awoke to the excited presence of Muin, who greeted him with uncontainable joy. Thrilled to see him awake, she eagerly informed him of his return, prompting Leon to sit up in confusion and question how he had ended up back there. Muin cheerfully revealed that her mother, Rosswise, had brought him back, making Leon mutter under his breath, realizing that she had finally ensnared him like prey. As he shifted, he noticed the bandage on his hand and Muin proudly declared that she had been the one to wrap it. Leon recalled the teachings of dragonologists, who had described dragons as a fierce race raised in bloodshed and violence from an early age. Yet, as he looked at Muin, he saw no trace of that hostility. Despite her obvious dragon heritage, she regarded him purely as her father, making him wonder if her half-human nature played a role in this difference. Smiling, he patted her head and praised her efforts, causing Muin to beam with satisfaction. He then affectionately remarked on her cuteness, advising her that when she grew up, she should avoid taking after her mother. Before he could continue, Rosswise's voice interrupted, questioning what was wrong with being like her. Startled, Leon turned away, stammering an evasive response. Meanwhile, Muin excitedly showed Rosswise the bandaged wound, proudly explaining that she had followed her mother's instructions. Rosswise, with her usual composure, simply acknowledged that Muin had done what was expected of her, reinforcing to Leon that she was a strict mother. Seizing the opportunity, Leon proposed a game to Muin, suggesting she hide in the garden while he counted to 100. Delighted, Muin eagerly agreed, questioning if he truly intended to play hide-and-seek with her. Leon assured her he was not like her mother and urged her to run quickly. As he began counting, Muin raced off, calling for him not to count too fast. With Muin gone, Leon turned his attention to Rosswise, exclaiming that he had been addressing her all along. He questioned whether she was being too strict with their child. Rosswise firmly explained that dragons were raised under rigid discipline to cultivate strength and become formidable warriors. Leon, disagreeing, reminded her that Muin was not entirely a dragon and, regardless, was incredibly endearing. Rosswise dismissed his argument, emphasizing that Muin was still a dragon. Undeterred, Leon smirked and teasingly remarked that Rosswise herself was rather cute. This provoked her fury, and she seized his shirt, angrily reminding him that he was merely her slave, meant to bear her wrath, and should not overstep his bounds. Defeated, he reluctantly conceded, prompting Rosswise to regain her composure. She reaffirmed her dominance, stating that as queen of the Silver Dragon clan, she had government affairs to manage, leaving the responsibility of raising Muin to him. Lowering her voice, she whispered a final remark, acknowledging that Muin was particularly fond of him. Later, as Leon wandered through the garden, he reflected on the irony of a dragon slayer being entrusted with raising a dragon child. His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed a small figure attempting to hide behind him. Realizing that Muin was still too naive to conceal herself effectively, he turned and declared that he had found her. However, instead of responding, the child simply stared at him in silence. Puzzled, Leon wondered if she was upset and quickly apologized for making her wait. Without warning, Muin dashed away, leaving Leon bewildered. He hurried after her, calling out in confusion, trying to understand why she was running. As he rounded a corner, he was stunned to find that she had completely vanished. Scanning the area, he struggled to comprehend how she had disappeared so quickly. The unpredictability of a child's emotions became even clearer to him, reinforcing why Rosswise had entrusted him with Muin's care. Unbeknownst to him, Muin had silently circled behind him. With a sudden leap, she latched onto his back, triumphantly declaring her victory. Leon, startled by her sudden appearance, asked if she had just passed by him moments ago. Muin, confused, innocently explained that, since he hadn't found her, she had come looking for him instead. Perplexed, Leon questioned whether he had imagined things. Before he could dwell on it further, Muin eagerly seized his hand and pulled him forward, insisting that she had something to show him. Unnoticed by them, another child identical to Muin observed them from a distance before quietly slipping away. Later, within a room adjacent to the garden, Muin sat contentedly, humming as she worked on her drawings with colorful crayons. Leon watched her, feeling a deep sense of warmth and fulfillment. In that moment, he realized how precious it was to have a daughter. A quiet determination took root in his heart. Sooner or later, he would find a way to free Muin from Rosswise's grasp. Muin soon ran up to him, beaming with pride as she held out her artwork. She eagerly presented her latest drawing, declaring it to be a family portrait. Even before seeing it, Leon praised her, calling her amazing and reaffirming that she was truly his daughter. However, as he glanced at the drawing, his expression shifted to one of shock. Among the familiar figures, there were 2 children. Curious, he asked Muin about the extra figure. Without hesitation, she cheerfully revealed that the other child was her sister. Leon froze at the unexpected revelation. He had believed Muin to be his only child, but now he realized the truth. He had unknowingly fathered two. Recollecting the mysterious child he had glimpsed in the garden earlier, a realization struck him. He had mistakenly called out to her, believing she was Muin, and she had not responded. It was now clear to him why she had remained silent. However, she assured him that her sister Noah was not upset. She said that Noah might simply be shy around him, considering they had never spent much time together. However, deep down he's frustrated, blaming the dragons for keeping Noah hidden from him. Determined to uncover the truth, he resolved to confront Rosswise. In Rosswise's study, she was diligently working when Leon stormed in, calling her. Without looking up, she calmly inquired about Muin's whereabouts. Leon, his voice laced with frustration, informed her that Muin was playing with her sister. He then accused Rosswise of deliberately keeping secrets from him, demanding to know when she had planned to tell him that he had another daughter. Rosswise, unfazed, simply remarked that he had already figured it out, making it clear she saw no need for an explanation. Leon, irritated, sarcastically thanked her for the effort she had put into bearing their children, admitting that he had never expected her to have given him not just one, but two daughters. He then added that when he eventually returned to the Empire, he would ensure her name was inscribed in their family tree, a remark that visibly annoyed Rosswise. Keeping her composure, Rosswise questioned whether he had ever considered why she had not revealed Noah's existence to him earlier. Leon, assuming she was jealous of his close bond with Muin, accused her of intentionally keeping Noah from him. Unmoved by his reasoning, Rosswise simply asked if he truly wished to see Noah. Leon, taken aback, insisted that it was only natural for a father to want to meet his child. He asserted that, unlike her, who was always strict and distant, he intended to build a meaningful relationship with Noah. She's amused by his determination, warned him not to regret his decision. Later in the kitchen, Leon prepares a meal, smirking as he thought about Rosswise. As he chopped carrots, he vowed to impress Noah and make Rosswise acknowledge his efforts. He decided to cook cream stew, a dish he had often made for his former comrades, confident that its sweetness would appeal to children. Sampling his creation, he was pleased to find that his cooking skills had not deteriorated and felt assured that Noah would be won over by the meal. Nearby, two maids observed Leon with admiration, whispering among themselves about how devoted the prince was, especially after recently recovering from a serious illness. They praised him as a rare male dragon who took his role in the family seriously. Just then, Rosswise entered the kitchen with Muin and Noah by her side. The maids quickly bowed, and Rosswise dismissed them for the evening, stating their service would not be required during dinner. The maids grateful and left. As Rosswise and the children entered the dining area, Leon greeted them cheerfully, noting their perfect timing. Muin, drawn in by the delicious aroma, excitedly rushed over to see what he had prepared. Leon, addressing both girls, announced that since he had heard they enjoyed meat, he had made stew and steak especially for them. His attention shifted to Noah, eager to see her reaction. However, to his surprise, she merely averted her gaze, offering no response. Rosswise, standing nearby with a knowing smirk, seemed entirely unsurprised by this development. Leon began to suspect that she had deliberately delayed introducing him to Noah, perhaps anticipating this very outcome. Rosswise then urged Muin's older sister, Noah, to formally introduce herself. Obediently, Noah stepped forward, stating her full name as Noah K. Melk, the eldest daughter of the Silver Dragon Queen Rosswise. She also mentioned that she was 1 year and 2 months old. Leon, eager to establish a bond, warmly greeted her and introduced himself as her father. Determined to make a good impression, Leon maintained a polite demeanor, but Noah merely stared at him. Her cold reaction made him uneasy, leading him to question whether she resented him for some reason. Muin, noticing the tension, encouraged Noah to engage in conversation so as not to embarrass their father. However, Noah bluntly remarked that Leon appeared weak and questioned whether he was truly their father. Her words struck him deeply, making him realize that winning her over would be far more difficult than he had anticipated. For Leon, what should have been a heartwarming family dinner had become an ordeal. While Muin was affectionate and cheerful, Noah was reserved and distant, showing an entirely different personality from her younger sister. It was evident to Leon that Noah had inherited Rosswise's temperament. Hoping to connect with her, he gently asked if she liked the meal he had prepared. To his dismay, she coldly declared it disgusting. Rosswise, unable to contain her amusement, laughed at his misfortune. Muin, puzzled by her mother's reaction, inquired why she was so happy. Rosswise responded with a teasing remark, stating that she was simply delighted to see their father enjoying his time with the family. With a knowing smile, she playfully asked Leon why he wasn't smiling. Forced into an awkward position, he laughed nervously and agreed that he was indeed happy to be with them. Seizing the moment, Moon eagerly asked if Leon could join them for dinner every day. He hesitated, especially if it meant spending every evening with Rosswise. Before he could respond, Noah firmly voiced her opposition. Disheartened, Moon questioned why her sister was against it. Noah then expressed her desire to enroll in the Young Dragon Department, a school primarily attended by dragons aged 4 to 5 years old. Rosswise, slightly amused, pointed out that Noah was much younger than the other students and asked why she was so eager to enroll. Noah stated that she wanted to become stronger so she could defeat more dragon slayers. Leon was taken aback, nearly choking at the realization that Noah's ultimate goal could very well be to defeat him, her own father. Concerned for her safety, he attempted to reason, explaining that dragon slayers were formidable and that she was still too young to take on such a challenge. However, Noah furiously insisted that she should not be treated like a mere child, leaving him even more bewildered. To Leon's dismay, Rosswise fully supported Noah's ambition, agreeing that the sooner she trained, the sooner she could engage dragon slayers in battle. She then turned to Leon, challenging him to provide a valid reason why Noah should not attend. Realizing that outright opposition would only deepen the rift between him and Noah, Leon resolved to find another way to change her mind over time. He knew that convincing her would require patience, one that would allow him to guide her without forcing her into resentment. Leon remained calm and told her that he had no reason to object. However, internally he seethed with frustration, realizing that she had deliberately put him in this position to mentally torment him. He vowed to get back at her later. Rosswise then confirmed Noah's enrollment, stating that the entrance test for St. Heath Academy would be in a month, and in the meantime, Leon would help her prepare. Noah eagerly agreed, leaving Leon exasperated at his unwanted new responsibility. After dinner, as the twins chatted happily, Leon pointed out that the plates had not yet been cleaned. Rosswise reminded him that the servants would take care of it. However, Leon insisted that couples traditionally wash dishes together as a way to foster a harmonious family atmosphere. Leaning closer, he whispered that she should at least maintain appearances for the sake of the children. Seeing Mwen's eager expression, Rosswise reluctantly agreed. Mwen excitedly volunteered to help, but Noah immediately grabbed her and led her away without a word. Surprised, Mwen asked where they were going, but Noah remained silent, leaving Leon and Rosswise alone. A few minutes later, as Rosswise finished washing the dishes, she turned to Leon and demanded to know when he would contribute. Leon simply responded by reminding her of what he had said 2 years ago. She should never be alone with the strongest dragon slayer. At that moment, the mark on Rosswise's chest began to glow, sending a wave of shock through her. She shouted, demanding to know what he was planning. Leon remained calm and reminded her that, back then, he had been weakened by exhaustion, allowing her to dominate the situation. But now, the circumstances had changed. Leon continued, explaining that dragons were creatures driven by an innate desire to conquer and control. With a smirk, he asked Rosswise if she had ever experienced being on the receiving end of such control. The question left her speechless, her breath heavy as an unfamiliar sensation coursed through her body. Despite this, she mustered her strength and shouted at him to release her tail. Leon refused, reminding her of how she had humiliated him since his arrival. He suggested switching roles for the night, implying that it was now his turn to assert dominance. She erupted in fury, cursing him loudly, but their confrontation was abruptly interrupted by the sound approaching. Outside, the maids chatted and laughed, speculating about the queen's evening with her family. When they entered, they were astonished to find the kitchen spotless, wondering if Prince Leon had been the one to clean it. Meanwhile, Leon and Rosswise hid in the storage room. He whispered for her to stay quiet, pointing out that she wouldn't want the maids discovering their usually proud and mighty queen in such a vulnerable state. After scanning the area, the maids eventually left the kitchen, allowing Rosswise to glare at Leon in frustration. Ignoring her anger, he praised her for doing well and teasingly called her his dear wife. With a grin, he leaned in, smirking, while Rosswise, fragile yet flustered, glared back at him. 3 days later, Mwen anxiously told Noah that their father hadn't woken up for 3 days, and worriedly asked if he was dead. Noah, unfazed, told her to wait and see and kick Leon's face, making him shout in pain. Nonchalantly, she told Muen that he wasn't dead yet, leaving Leon fuming and wondering if any father deserved such treatment. Finally, Leon opened his eyes, prompting Muen to excitedly call out to Rosweiss, announcing that their father was awake. Groggily, he asked when he had fainted, but Rosweiss calmly inquired if he truly needed her to remind him. The realization hit him. After their intimate moment that night, the dragon mark had deactivated, and Rosweiss had struck him hard. He bitterly reflected on how ruthless she was, knowing that if he were an ordinary man, he would have perished under her claws multiple times. However, as he observed her more closely, he found himself admitting that Rosweiss was quite beautiful, despite being a 200-year-old dragon. Muen, noticing his stillness, asked Noah why their father wasn't moving. Noah, unimpressed, remarked that he was just staring at their mother. Seemingly dazed, Rosweiss, reaching for her hairpin, accidentally dropped it. Before she could react, Leon picked it up and carefully placed it in her hair, telling her it suited her. Caught off guard, she admitted she hadn't expected him to be so considerate, and asked if he had done this for other women before. Leon casually replied that as a child, he had often combed his master's donkey's hair and had grown quite skilled at it. Muen, curious, asked what a donkey was. Leon explained that donkeys were similar to dragons. They had 2 ears, a tail, were incredibly stubborn, and hummed when they were unhappy, much like her mother. Rosweiss was infuriated. Without hesitation, she elbowed Leon in the stomach, causing him to cry out in pain. Muen, concerned, asked if he was okay, and Leon weakly assured her that he was fine. Rosweiss then turned to Noah and assigned her the task of learning to write her name, adding that her father would be responsible for teaching her. Leon immediately protested, shouting at Rosweiss for giving him another task without his consent. Muen was excited, believing it would be fun to learn from their father, but Noah coolly stated that she already knew how to write. Determined, Leon led Noah to the study room, eager to find a pen with a nice color, and asked which one she preferred. Noah replied that she liked purple. After the children left, Rosweiss informed Leon that her sister would be visiting today, and that she didn't want him appearing before her. Confused, Leon asked why she wouldn't let him meet her family. Leaning in, Rosweiss whispered that he was now a male dragon who had married into the Silver Dragon clan, implying that his presence wasn't necessary. According to the narrative Rosweiss had woven, Leon had been in a coma for 2 years due to an illness, and had only recently awakened. She warned him that if he ever had to meet her sister, he would need to maintain this fabricated identity. Leon acknowledged her words but silently seethed, vowing to turn the situation to his advantage and humiliate her in front of her sister as payback. Meanwhile, in the children's study, Leon guided Muen and Noah in writing their names. He wrote their names on paper and instructed them to replicate his handwriting multiple times. However, Noah bluntly remarked that his writing lacked the elegance of their mother's, wounding his pride. With feigned nonchalance, he declared that he had something to give to Rosweiss and swiftly exited the room. Muen questioned his abrupt departure, but he reassured them that he would return later to check their progress. Noah called him foolish, while Muen observed that he seemed somewhat happy. Despite Noah's indifferent demeanor, she secretly felt a flicker of happiness upon seeing her father write her name. At the castle gates, Rosweiss greeted her sister, Aisha Melkfi, the Red Dragon Queen, embracing her warmly. Aisha remarked on her rosy complexion, making her blush and deny any reason for it. Curious about her sister's husband, Aisha inquired why she had yet to meet him. Rosweiss quickly fabricated an excuse, claiming that Leon was feeling unwell and unable to receive guests. Aisha expressed disappointment, stating that she had been eager to see the Dragon King who had kidnapped her sister. She reminded her that marriages between Dragon Kings and Queens were typically based on alliances rather than affection. However, the rapid formation of their union and the birth of their child suggested that their relationship was stronger than expected. Flustered, she adamantly denied any attraction to Leon, swearing that she had never felt nor would ever feel any such sentiment. Aisha, amused by her defensiveness, playfully took her arm and suggested they continue their conversation in the garden. Observing from the castle, Leon noted Isha's arrival and contemplated testing the influence of the dragon pattern. As Rosweiss and Aisha strolled through the garden, their conversation turned to the instability within the Dragon clan, particularly the recent activity of the Red Flame Dragon King. Rosweiss expressed surprise at Constantine's movements, given that he had remained unseen for years. Isha speculated that he was attempting to expand his territory. Just then, the dragon pattern on Rosweiss's chest ignited, disrupting her focus. Isha noticed her sudden distraction and inquired if something was wrong. Hastily, Rosweiss concealed the mark and dismissed her concerns, urging her sister to continue speaking. Glancing back at the castle, she seethed internally, realizing that Leon was deliberately provoking her while sitting at ease inside. Aisha advised reinforcing border defenses and suggested keeping in touch through trusted allies. However, Rosweiss found herself increasingly overwhelmed by the sensations triggered by the dragon pattern. Her face flushed, and Aisha, noticing her discomfort, asked if she was unwell. Struggling to maintain composure, she claimed she had an urgent matter to attend to and promised to return shortly. When Aisha offered to accompany her, she swiftly declined and hurried off. Watching her sister's hasty retreat, Aisha smirked knowingly, suspecting the dragon pattern's influence, and assuming that Rosweiss and Leon were indulging in their private affairs. Meanwhile, Leon, still seated, wondered how long Rosweiss could endure. He was startled when she stormed in moments later, grabbing his clothes angrily and demanding to know if he had deliberately activated the dragon pattern to embarrass her in front of her sister. Feigning innocence, Leon's eyes welled up as he asked tearfully if it was wrong to want her. Surprised, Rosweiss let him go, her face flushed with shyness. Leon, noticing her reaction, assumed his act had worked and guessed she might at least be disgusted with him now. She stammered, calling him shameless, and shouted that a defeated prisoner had no right to speak such rubbish. Ordering him to put away his dirty thoughts, she turned away. Though she had come to confront him, she wondered why she felt intimidated by a few words from him. Calming herself, Rosweiss warned him that he was lucky this time, but vowed not to let him off if it happened again. As she left, Leon made a funny face behind her, teasing her. He realized that a single suggestive word could leave Rosweiss flustered, confirming the dragon pattern's power. However, he also wondered why thoughts of her made his heart beat so fast. Determined to stop thinking about her, he slapped his face hard to snap out of it, reminding himself that the kids were still waiting for him to return. Later, Rosweiss led her sister to the gate. Aisha waved goodbye, telling her she would leave today. She waved back and reminded her to be careful on the road. Aisha then transformed into a red dragon and before leaving asked Rosweiss to let her meet her husband next time. Rosweiss agreed, responding that they would talk next time. As Isha and her guards flew away, Rosweiss fumed. She cursed Leon under her breath, irritated that she hadn't taught him a proper lesson yet, and vowed to deal with him that evening. Meanwhile, Leon sneezed loudly, wondering if Rosweiss was scolding him. Closing the book he was holding, he noticed that the children had fallen asleep. Gently, he tucked them in with a blanket and told them not to catch a cold. Quietly, he stepped out of the room and carefully closed the door, only to be startled when a hand slammed against it. Turning around, he found Rosweiss glaring at him, demanding to know where he thought he was going. Surprised, he asked if her sister had already left. She ignored his question, curtly stating they still had things to do today, before dragging him off as he shouted in protest. Moments later, they arrived at the Silver Dragon Queen's bedroom. Leon set down a bucket of hot water on the floor and asked what it was for. Rosweiss, stating she was tired from walking all day, ordered him to wash her feet. Confused, Leon prepared to protest, but she cut him off, warning him to stop talking nonsense and obey, declaring it as his punishment for what he had done earlier. Grudgingly, he removed her shoes, muttering to himself about how humiliating it was for a dragon slayer to become a foot-washing slave for a female dragon. As he prepared the water, he couldn't help but notice how Rosweiss seemed to thoroughly enjoy herself. A thought crossed his mind about how many dragon slayers had fallen beneath those feet. Rosweiss caught him staring and asked if he had some kind of strange habit. Snapping out of his thoughts, Leon placed her feet in the hot water, laughing mischievously as the heat burned her. She yelped, quickly pulling her feet out and accidentally kicking him in the face. Leon was knocked to the ground, and she stepped on him in frustration, accusing him of deliberately trying to take revenge. Laughing, he retorted, asking who had ordered him to wash her feet in the first place. Glaring, Rosweiss pressed her feet against his lower abdomen, pausing as she asked if he had ever imagined being stepped on by a dragon. Slowly, she began moving her foot, making his body tense. He stammered, telling her to stop, feeling both humiliated and oddly comforted. But she continued, teasingly stating that she wanted to see how long he could endure. Despite this strange mix of emotions, Leon reminded himself that he could not succumb to the tyranny of a female dragon. In an act of defiance, he grabbed her foot and sat up, declaring loudly that he had eaten pigs' trotters, cows' trotters, and goats' trotters, but never dragons' trotters. Rosweiss shouted at him, demanding to know what he was doing, but Leon laughed and declared that his snack tonight would be raw dragon claws. Without hesitation, he bit her foot, making her scream in pain and threatened to kill him. The following day, Muin and Noah visited their parents. Muin immediately noticed Rosweiss's limp and, filled with concern, asked why she was walking strangely. Rosweissa, however, dismissed her worry with a casual remark, insisting it was nothing. Shifting her attention, Muin then noticed the bruises on Leone's face and questioned him about his injuries. Like Rosweissa, he brushed off her concern, claiming it was nothing to worry about. Puzzled but undeterred, Muin cheerfully concluded that they must have been playing a fun game without her, and declared that she wanted to join next time. The following day, Rosweissa and Leone found themselves walking together in the garden outside the castle. Despite being side by side, their movements were stiff and awkward. The maids, observing from a distance, remarked that the two made a lovely couple, but also noted how they seemed strangely unfamiliar with each other. Meanwhile, an awkward silence lingered between them. Leone stole a glance at Rosweissa, inwardly questioning how their situation had turned so uncomfortable. He recalled how, earlier, she had suggested taking a walk, to which he had loudly protested, demanding to know why he had to accompany her. She had calmly responded that maintaining the image of a harmonious family was part of his role. Now, as they strolled together, Leon sensed something unusual. Rosweissa was not typically this proactive. He began to wonder what she was planning. Unbeknownst to them, Muin and Noah were watching closely behind a tree. Muin, unimpressed by her parents' awkwardness, remarked that their father was clueless, since he couldn't even hold hands with their mother. Determined, Muin ignored Noah's attempts to hold her back and rushed toward them. Stopping their walk, she grabbed Leon's hand with one of her own, and Rosweissa's with the other, pressing them together. With a bright smile, she informed them that couples should hold hands while walking. Then, satisfied with her intervention, she turned and ran off, announcing that she would play with her sister. Leone stood stunned silence, wondering where Muin had picked up such ideas. Moments later, they heard Muin cry out from behind the tree. Peeking over, they saw Noah pinching Muin's cheek, scolding her, and making her promise not to interfere again. Still holding hands, Leon glanced at Rosweissa, clearly flustered, and asked what they should do now. Rosweissa, unbothered, reassured him that it was fine to continue as they were. Leone noted that she seemed unusually compliant today, which unsettled him. Teasingly, Rosweiss suggested that he had simply grown too accustomed to her usual demeanor, and now that she was being kind. Nearby, Muin and Noah observed the scene with bright smiles, pleased with their small victory. As they continued walking, Leona realized that Rosweiss, usually a regal and imposing figure, seemed unaccustomed to such simple intimacy. This led him to reflect on her parenting style. Perhaps her strict demeanor came from uncertainty about how to connect with her children. He then pointed out that Muin and Noah always referred to her as mother, instead of mom. When Rosweiss asked why that was an issue, Leon explained that dad was naturally paired with mom, and the more formal mother might create an emotional distance. He suggested that encouraging them to call her mom could foster a closer bond. Rosweiss was taken aback. Feeling a bit flustered, she quickened her pace, but did not let go of his hand. She agreed to try his suggestion. Leon, slightly amused, asked why she was suddenly walking so fast. Rather than answer directly, she deflected by asking if he was homesick. Caught off guard, Leon questioned her sudden concern, pointing out that she had no intention of letting him leave regardless. Rosweiss acknowledged that she couldn't allow him to leave, but she had something that might alleviate his homesickness. Leading him through the castle, she stopped at a seemingly unremarkable room and retrieved a key. When Leon inquired about the purpose of the room, she casually referred to it as a warehouse, allowing him to interpret its significance however he pleased. Unlocking the door, she gestured for him to step inside. Leon was immediately struck by the sheer wealth within. Gleaming treasures filled the space, their value easily reaching hundreds of thousands of gold coins by imperial standards. Awed, he questioned if this was the dragon's personal trove. Rosweiss explained that while much of it consisted of spoils from various conquests, some items held deep personal significance, such as the bracelet her grandmother had gifted her in childhood. Leon noted that she rarely spoke of her family apart from her sister Aisha. In response, Rosweiss revealed that she had never known her parents and was raised solely by her grandmother alongside Aisha. Understanding her words, Leon shared his own upbringing, how he had grown up in an orphanage before being adopted by his master and his wife. He then questioned why she had brought him to this particular room. Without answering directly, Rosweiss approached a large treasure chest. She lifted the lid, revealing its contents, black gold armor that shimmered under the light. Leon stared in disbelief. Recognizing it instantly, he turned to her with wide eyes as she asked if she had correctly guessed that he had long desired its return. Overcome with emotion, Leon reached for the armor, his voice shaking as he asked if this was truly happening. Rosweiss, smiling mischievously, assured him that it was. But the moment his fingers made contact with the metal, a brilliant light flared from the surface, revealing an embedded enchanted dragon mark. Realization struck him too late. Staggering back, Leon muttered to the armor, lamenting its fate before turning to Rosweiss in fury, only to find her laughing. The truth dawned on him as she revealed her deception. This had been a trap. Outside the room, Leon's frustrated shouts rang out as he demanded answers. Rosweiss explained that she had inscribed a dragon pattern onto the armor, enhancing its properties. The moment he touched it, the enchantment activated, triggering an intense and uncontrollable sensation that left him powerless. His body rebelled against him, heat surging uncontrollably through his veins. Watching him struggle, Rosweiss crouched beside him, cupping his face with a smile. Mocking his predicament, she playfully questioned whether he could withstand the effects of the spell. His muscles refused to obey him, his breath ragged as the enchantment took full hold. Taking her time, Rosweiss pushed him onto the floor, straddling him as she enjoyed her victory. She confessed that she had spent the past few days planning her revenge, devising the perfect moment to catch him off guard. Amused, she remarked that he had been far easier to deceive than she expected. As he lay beneath her, furious yet helpless, she asked what he thought of her performance, whether her words earlier had seemed genuine. His mind reeled as he accused her of lying about everything, from her past to her desire for Moon to call her mom, even down to their seemingly innocent hand-holding. Rosweiss reassured him that every word had been true, but that did not change her current intentions. With slow, deliberate movements, she began removing her garments, a teasing smile playing on her lips. Reminding him of his previous question about her nature, she admitted with satisfaction that she did enjoy conquering. Addressing him as her dear husband, she asked if he was prepared. Leon's curses filled the air as she leaned in closer. His voice resonated beyond the walls of the castle. After some time, Leon lay exhausted, relieved that the ordeal was finally over. As he caught his breath, he noticed Rosweiss watching him intently. Uneasy, he asked what she was doing. Without hesitation, she reached out, holding his face as she observed the faded scars from 2 years ago, remarking on how they had softened, yet left him looking more rugged. She mused that he now carried the air of a mature man. Startled, Leon jumped back, accusing her of trying to deceive him once more. Rosweiss, unbothered, calmly dressed herself, teasing that he had grown more cautious. Just as he began to relax, she smirked and added that his stamina was no longer what it used to be. Her words echoed in his mind, and the realization hit him. Overcome with embarrassment, he yelled in frustration. The following morning, a knock on his door stirred Leon from his restless sleep. Opening it, he found Rosweiss standing there with Noah. She immediately noticed the dark circles under his eyes and, with a sly smile, remarked that he seemed to have had a rough night. Leon, still groggy, snapped that she was entirely to blame. Feigning innocence, she claimed to have no idea what he was talking about. Watching their exchange, Noah sighed, muttering that their usual bickering had begun once again. Shifting the conversation, Rosweiss instructed Leon to tutor Noah, noting that the entrance exam for St. Heath Academy was notoriously difficult. Leaning, she whispered that, for now, proving his worth in other ways was his only option. Annoyed, Leon, still stung by her previous comment, insisted that his performance yesterday had been an exception. He vowed to ensure Noah passed the exam, but only if he received something of equal value in return. Rosweiss agreed, but cautioned that his request could not be too outrageous. Leon grinned, reminding her that a promise was a promise. As she walked away laughing, she advised him to work hard and not to overexert himself. Curious, Noah turned to Leon and asked, why he was always arguing with her mom. Leon brushed it off, calling it their unique way of communicating. However, his train of thought abruptly halted as something dawned on him. He turned to Noah and asked what she had just called Rosweiss. Noah simply responded, Mom. Leon, taken aback, excitedly asked if Rosweiss had requested her to say it and whether she liked it. Noah replied that she genuinely preferred it. Hearing this, Leon was pleased that his earlier suggestion had worked. As he watched Noah walk away, she called back, asking when their lessons would begin. Still caught up in his thoughts, Leon hurriedly chased after her, telling her to wait. Later that night, in the children's study room, Leon sat hunched over a desk, immersed in books and notes. Rosweiss entered, surprised to find him still awake. She questioned why he hadn't gone to bed given the late hour. Without looking up, Leon explained that Noah had an exceptional aptitude for learning, meaning conventional teaching methods wouldn't be sufficient. He was compiling key concepts and structuring them into practice questions, ensuring the most effective learning process. Confidently, he declared that, with his guidance, Noah would pass the exam within a month. Rosweiss smirked, attributing Noah's intelligence to herself. Leon scoffed at her remark and countered that it wasn't necessarily true. With a proud grin, he revealed that he had been a top scholar, excelling in both written and practical exams every year, securing the highest scholarships available. Then, with a mischievous glint in his eye, he turned the question on her, asking about her own academic achievements and what titles she had earned. Rosweiss was momentarily caught off guard. She had always seen Leon as a reckless warrior, driven by battle and bloodshed, never imagining him as a prodigy. Amused, she praised his brilliance before slyly questioning how someone so accomplished had ended up as her prisoner. Annoyed, Leon snapped that he had only lost once, muttering bitterly that a single mistake could lead to eternal regret. Rosweiss raised an eyebrow at his claim, amused that he compared himself to a tiger bested by a dragon. Smirking, she teasingly suggested that perhaps he feared being ridden by one instead. Her eyes then fell on a chili pepper resting on the table, and she curiously asked what he planned to do with it. Leon confidently explained that he had taken it from the kitchen to help himself stay awake. Without hesitation, he bit into it, only for Rosweiss to suddenly shout in alarm. She quickly warned him that it was a dragon clan's yellow pepper, far too spicy for a human to handle. Within moments, an unbearable heat surged through Leon's mouth, and to his horror, he started breathing fire. Shouting in agony, he frantically searched for water but found none in reach. Seeing his distress, Rosweiss swiftly cupped his face, her icy fingers pressing against his flushed skin. The cool sensation dulled the unbearable burning, and Leon, momentarily stunned, relaxed under her touch. Embarrassed, Rosweiss looked away, explaining that her hands were naturally cool and might ease the discomfort. Leon found himself noting that her touch wasn't harsh like ice, but carried a gentle, soothing chill. He thanked her, feeling the pain fade. The instant he spoke, Rosweiss quickly withdrew her hands, both of them left flustered. Without another word, she turned to leave, instructing him to sleep early and warning him not to overindulge in chili again. Jokingly, she added that if his mouth became too inflamed, he might have to tutor Noah using sign language. Stammering, Leon understood. As she exited the room, he found himself sneaking a glance at her retreating figure. A stray thought crossed his mind, that he wouldn't have minded if she had lingered a little longer. Cringing at himself, he shook his head, snapping out of his daze. He reminded himself that Rosweiss was still the cunning dragon who had tricked and exhausted him before. Surely he wouldn't fall for her tricks again. Determined to regain his strength, he turned back to his studies. While reading, he stumbled upon information about the Dragon Big Force, a renowned medicinal formula known for enhancing vitality. Excited by the discovery, he noted its benefits in balancing energy, nourishing the body, and improving overall health. Hope surged within him. Perhaps this was the key to recovering his full strength. The next day, Leon summoned Noah to the study, holding her graded test paper. With the full score being 100, he asked her to guess her result. She hesitantly guessed 50, but he revealed that she had actually scored 62. Though the number was higher than expected, Noah's expression hint of disappointment evident in her eyes. Leon was taken aback, realizing she wasn't satisfied with her performance. He admired her determination, but couldn't help but feel she should be enjoying a more carefree childhood, like Muin. Still, he respected her resolve to study hard. Gently patting her head, He reassured her that achieving a score of 62 on her first attempt was already impressive. Noah, flustered, softly thanked him. Encouragingly, he suggested they go over her mistakes together to improve for next time. Just as he prepared to start the review, a suddenly coughed. Leon muttered an apology, wondering if the lingering effects of the previous night's spicy chili had irritated his throat. He sighed, already regretting his impulsive decision to eat it. Noah recalled how Rosweiss had mentioned Leon's late-night study session and his attempt to stay awake by eating the Dragon Clan's extra spicy yellow pepper. Remembering this, she reached into her pocket and handed him a small object. Leon, surprised by the gesture, asked if it was meant for him. Noah confirmed, but clarified that it was from her mom, not herself. Amused, Leon chuckled and told her to thank Rosweiss, remarking that Noah resembled her mother, cold on the surface, but not skilled at expressing kindness. Feeling reinvigorated, Leon suggested they continue studying, and Noah agreed. In that moment, the bond between father and daughter grew just a little closer. The next day in the kitchen, maids arrived carrying bundles of herbs. They informed Leon that all the requested herbs had been gathered. He instructed them to place everything on the table, though he had secretly requested additional herbs to prevent them from guessing his true intentions. Aware that the ingredients for refining Dragon Great Force were relatively common and the steps not overly complex, he still found himself questioning why even the most skilled pharmacists of the Dragon Clan struggled with a low success rate. Leon ground and mixed the herbs before carefully adding them to the pot in sequence, allowing them to boil. Hours passed, and yet he found himself staring at multiple failed potions, his frustration mounting. Despite following the book's instructions precisely, the final step of drug purification and separation remained his biggest hurdle. According to the text, high-temperature separation was required. Too much heat would inactivate the medicine, while too little would fail to extract its pure essence. Understanding that manual shaking alone could not achieve the necessary separation, Leon realized professional tools were required. Remembering his master's advice to always seek alternative solutions, he began contemplating new methods. Just then, a powerful thunderclap echoed outside the kitchen window. Looking up, he noticed dark clouds rolling in, signaling an imminent storm. As he moved to shut the window, a bolt of lightning illuminated the sky, triggering a memory from his alchemy class. His teacher had once mentioned that electrolysis could be more effective than fire in removing impurities. Inspired, Leon hurried back to his workstation, determined to try a different approach. Believing that his lightning magic, now fully restored, would be precise enough for such a delicate task, he carefully channeled it into the potion. Half an hour later, his efforts bore fruit. The impurities successfully removed, he gazed at the perfectly refined pill. Smiling, he placed the completed medicine in a small box, declaring with confidence that Dragon Clan medicine was easier to master than he had expected. Leon's moment of triumph was cut short when Muin appeared at the doorway, her eyes filled with curiosity as she inquired about what he was making. Casually, he responded that it was something good. However, noticing her fixed gaze on the small box, he quickly moved it away and shut it, dismissing her curiosity by saying it was nothing of importance. Muin, unconvinced, and asked if it was candy. Leon corrected her, explaining that it was medicine he had made for her mom. Concerned, Muin immediately asked if Rosweiss was ill. Leon reassured her that she was fine, merely busy, and he wanted to prepare something to nourish her. In reality, though, the pill was intended for himself. Muin, with earnest sincerity, reminded him to take good care of her mother. Smiling, Leon agreed, stating that it was a father's duty. In his heart, he resolved to truly care for Rosweiss once he regained his strength. Later that night, rain poured heavily outside as Leon sat alone in his room, contemplating his creation. Though he had successfully refined the Dragon Great Force, he wondered whether the effects of a Dragon Clan's nutritional supplement might be too much for a human body to handle. Deciding to put the matter aside for now, his thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock on the door. Rosweiss then entered the room. Shocked by her unexpected presence, he questioned why she was there. Rosweiss explained that Muin had mentioned the medicine he had created, describing it as chocolate candy meant to regulate her body. Realizing that Muin had revealed his secret, Leon sighed. However, Rosweiss reassured him that she was not there to interrogate him, but was merely curious about how he had managed to refine medicine in such a simple environment. Leaning in, she asked what he had made and whether she could take a look at it. Though reluctant, Leon knew that refusing was pointless. If she wanted it, she would take it by force. Accepting the inevitable, he handed her the small box. Rosswise opened it, carefully examining the pill inside before nodding in approval. She acknowledged the impressive quality, stating that, despite the circumstances, he had managed to create a near-perfect dragon great force. Her words caught Leon off guard, as he had expected ridicule rather than genuine praise. Instead, she quoted an old saying about the balance between men of letters and men of arms, surprising him further with her sincere recognition of his efforts. However, Rosswise quickly followed her praise with a stern warning. He must not take the pill. She explained that, as a dragon tonic, it was far too potent for a human body to withstand. When Leon questioned whether it was truly that powerful, she reminded him that, as a human, his body would not be able to handle the effects. Undeterred, Leon scoffed, asserting that he had bested countless dragon kings in battle and would not be defeated by a mere tonic. Refusing to be underestimated, he boldly swallowed the pill in one swift motion. Triumphantly, he declared that courage was the hymn of mankind. His moment of bravado was short-lived, as almost immediately a sharp pain surged through his body. His skin turned red, and he doubled over in agony, clutching his chest as the overwhelming force took hold. Rosswise, alarmed, called him an idiot, cursing his reckless nature. She admitted that she rarely practiced healing magic and was uncertain of how to help him. Panicked, she asked how he was feeling and whether she should try to break down the effects of the pill. Leon stopped her from interfering. With great effort, he forced himself to activate his magic, urging her to watch closely. If she wished to understand the courage and willpower of mankind, then he would show her. Lightning surged from his body, illuminating the stormy skies above Silver Dragon Castle as he endured the pain, his defiance shining through the darkness. Rosswise watched in disbelief as Leon used lightning magic on himself. She couldn't fathom what madness had possessed him. Just as she was about to call out to him, he suddenly collapsed. Alarmed, she rushed to catch him, carefully laying him on the bed while muttering to herself that he was a complete fool. As she turned to leave to fetch the court physician, Leon suddenly reached out and grabbed her tail, causing her to freeze in shock. He smiled at her, addressing her as his wife and asking where she was going. Flustered and taken aback, she shyly questioned who he thought his wife was. Embarrassed, she attempted to pull away, demanding that he release her. But he only hugged her tail tighter, repeatedly calling her his wife. Rosswise began to suspect that the dragon great force, intended to strengthen the body, had been altered by his lightning magic, causing unexpected side effects. Normally, the medicine should not have induced unconsciousness or delirium. With a sigh, she realized that while Leon was behaving like a complete fool, he did not appear to be in any immediate danger. Resigned, she decided to stay and asked what he wanted. Leon, in a dazed but insistent manner, expressed his strong desire for a second child, leaving Rosswise utterly speechless. She scolded him, pointing out that he had yet to properly care for the two children from her first pregnancy, and firmly dismissed the idea. However, Leon persisted, his childlike tone making him seem more unreasonable than ever. Repeating his request over and over, he asked if she would agree. Frustrated, she sighed, realizing it would be easier to humor him to avoid further complications. Begrudgingly, she told him that they could have a second, a third, and even a fourth child. Satisfied with her answer, Leon then suggested that she accompany him back to his hometown. Hesitantly, she agreed, saying they could go after settling matters here. Relieved, Leon finally let go of her tail, beaming with happiness. Rosswise found him more annoying than ever, but held her patience as he leaned in closer, attempting to kiss her while complimenting her kindness. Panicked, she pushed him away, scolding him for trying to take advantage of the situation, while internally wondering when the medicine's effects would wear off. In her desperation, she instinctively punched him, knocking him back onto the bed. Immediately regretting her reaction, she worriedly asked if he was all right. Leon, clutching his chest, admitted that he felt strange, hot, itchy, and unbearably uncomfortable. As Rosswise watched, she noticed the dragon pattern on his chest glowing and froze in shock. A wave of panic set in as she realized the lightning element mixed with the dragon pattern was intensifying the pill's effects. Tearing open his shirt to inspect the mark, she barely had a moment to react before Leon suddenly flipped her onto the bed. Struggling against him, she furiously demanded to know what he was doing. Leon, his voice weak, explained that his body felt unbearably hot and itchy. His focus then shifted to her tail, which he began complimenting. Exasperated, she pushed his face away, telling him that her tail was constantly dragging on the ground and dirty, but he seemed not to mind. Ignoring her protests, he gently touched her lip and called her beautiful, leaving her completely flustered. Rossweiss tried to maintain her composure, but Leon's intense behavior, a strange mix of madness and tenderness, began to affect her. While she questioned his motives, a part of her couldn't help but wonder if she herself harbored a small expectation of him. When Leon softly asked if she could help him, Rossweiss reluctantly agreed, reasoning that it was best to humor him for one night to prevent further chaos. What followed became the most romantic and intense night they had ever shared. The next morning, Leon woke up feeling sore all over and was utterly shocked to find Rossweiss lying beside him. Sitting up abruptly, he demanded to know why she was there, struggling to piece together fragmented memories of the previous night. Smirking, Rossweiss reminded him of the events, revealing numerous hickeys on her body as proof. Horrified, Leon clutched his head as the realization dawned on him. Groaning, he refused to believe it, but she teasingly recounted how he had begged her, calling her honey and wife, pleading for her help. Flustered and utterly embarrassed, Leon shouted for her to stop, insisting he now remembered everything and didn't need to hear it again. Hastily putting on his shirt, he reflected on how his original intention in refining the Dragon Great Force had been to improve his health and teach Rossweiss a lesson. He had not anticipated the drug's overwhelming effects when combined with his lightning magic. Finally accepting what had happened, Leon hesitantly admitted to her that he might have gone a little too far the previous night, and awkwardly asked if she was hurt. She responded calmly, assuring Leon that she was perfectly fine. Relieved, he took the opportunity to remind her that this should serve as proof of his excellent health, and warned her not to doubt his capabilities again. However, Rossweiss, clearly unimpressed by his attempt at boasting, leaned in closer, catching him off guard. Smirking, she remarked that she was very satisfied with his performance, and hoped he could maintain it in the future. Leon, completely stunned, was left speechless, unable to believe that he was now being evaluated as if he were a hired servant. Before he could process her words, Rossweiss smoothly changed the subject, bringing up their previous bet regarding the name change. Shyly, she admitted that he had won and asked if he had already decided on his request. Without hesitation, Leon confirmed that he had made his decision and asked if she could send someone to the Empire to check on his master and his master's wife. Rossweiss acknowledged his request, explaining that while the Silver Dragon clan was not particularly skilled in espionage, visiting someone openly would not be an issue. Overjoyed, Leon loudly expressed his gratitude but quickly composed himself, opting for a more formal show of appreciation instead. Later, in the garden of Silver Dragon Castle, Leon sat with Moen, his exhaustion evident. Concerned, Moen immediately asked if he was feeling unwell. He quickly denied it, questioning why she would think such a thing. Giggling, Moen explained that Rossweiss had told her he had taken medicine the previous day, and that men, especially those like him, would never admit when they were sick. Annoyed, Leon wondered why Rossweiss would say such things to a child, and if she truly believed he had no dignity left. Moen, still noticing his fatigue, curiously asked if the medicine he had taken wasn't effective enough, or if he simply hadn't taken enough of it. Frustrated, Leon bit his lip hard enough to draw blood and politely but firmly told Moen that it was impolite to continue asking such questions. However, the moment Moen noticed the blood on his lip, she panicked, immediately throwing her arms around him in a desperate embrace, declaring that she could not live without him and begging him not to die. Leon, touched by her concern, smiled and reassured her that he was perfectly fine. As he reflected on her reaction, he couldn't help but notice that she shared certain traits with Rossweiss, making the resemblance between mother and daughter even more endearing. To lift Moen's spirits, Leon offered to make her a new toy, an idea that immediately excited her. Enthusiastically, she declared her love for toys, and Leon set to work crafting one for her. Carefully constructing and painting the toy, he eventually handed it to her, explaining that it was called a Rubik's Cube, and that she could twist it in any direction she liked. Moen eagerly accepted the cube, her excitement palpable, and as he watched her play with it, Leon recalled learning about simple mechanical linkages during his alchemy mechanics class. He had never expected those principles to become useful while babysitting, and with a wry smile, he humorously wondered if he had been destined to be a caretaker all along. Suddenly, he sensed something behind him and turned sharply, scanning the area. Muen noticed his reaction and asked if something was wrong, but he quickly dismissed her concerns, saying it was nothing. In truth, he had felt the distinct presence of a dragon's gaze coming from the direction where Noah was engaged in physical training. Although he knew Noah wouldn't approach them, he made a quiet decision to create a Rubik's Cube for her as well. Later that night, after returning to her room following training, Noah discovered a Rubik's Cube and a note left on her table. The letter explained that the toy was for her and challenged her to solve it. Muttering that Leon was an idiot, she initially scoffed at the idea, dismissing it as a childish game. However, curiosity soon got the better of her, and she found herself twisting the cube, attempting to restore its original form. As she did, she quietly and shyly whispered her thanks to her father for the thoughtful gesture. The next day, Muen noticed Noah rummaging under their bed. Once Noah had left the room, curiosity got the better of Muen, and she decided to take a peek at what her sister had hidden. Opening a small treasure box, she found several items. The Rubik's Cube Leon had made, fragments of Leon's black and gold armor, and a piece of paper with Noah's name written in their father's handwriting. Examining the collection, Muen quickly realized that every item had a connection to Leon. With a soft smile, she concluded that despite Noah's outward coldness, she cared deeply for their father, more than she would ever admit. Engrossed in her discovery, Muen failed to notice Noah standing behind her. Before she could react, Noah swiftly restrained her, tying her up. Sternly, Noah scolded her younger sister for snooping and warned her never to do it again. Muen, caught red-handed, had no choice but to accept her fate, knowing that she had been thoroughly outmatched.